chaos as fire erupts at former asylum in Ireland. A guard stood by the main gate to the former Newcastle lunatic asylum as smoke billowed into the air behind him. Flames engulfed part of the building, and people looked on in horror as the roof collapsed. But while most saw this as simply a fire, local resident Mary believed there was something more sinister going on. She claimed that the spirit of one patient was behind the blaze. But why did he do it? And can we discover the truth behind the fire? This is the mysterious case of the burning asylum. It all started on the night of January 1994. The large, Victorian-era building had been empty for over a decade, but that didn't stop dozens of squatters from calling it home. It was these squatters who raised the alarm as flames spread throughout the attic. While nobody was hurt, thousands of pounds worth of damage was done. But many wondered if the destruction of the building was actually the work of a ghost. After all, the history of the asylum was a dark one. It opened its doors in 1841 and was originally called the County Louth and Meath District Lunatic Asylum. For over a century, some of the most disturbed people in Ireland stayed here. They were kept in horrific conditions, often chained up for days on end. After closing in 1993, the site lay derelict, becoming infamous locally for being haunted. So could the ghost of a former patient have set the fire? Or was there another explanation? Let's investigate. The time has come to delve into the archives in search of answers. Records show that the building was constructed in 1841 and opened its doors the following year. The asylum was run by the local commissioners of national education and was initially designed to house 250 patients. However, the numbers would soon rise above 500. The poor conditions led to a number of deaths, and in 1868, an inquiry was launched. Documents from the time revealed how overcrowded the facility was. A typical day for a patient included being woken up early, having their bed changed, and then being herded into the main dining room. Some patients reportedly ate so little they had to be force-fed. But things would become even worse when a new superintendent took charge in 1874. He would remain in charge for the next 35 years. Superintendent William Charles Mandeville was known for his cruel treatment of patients. Records from the time describe how he would regularly shout at staff members and once broke the arm of a patient. In 1895, a woman named Margaret Lennon was admitted to the asylum. She suffered from depression and anxiety after the death of her mother. But it wasn't long before she was subjected to the harsh punishments carried out by Superintendent Mandeville. She was locked up for up to 14 hours a day and was only given bread and water to eat. On one occasion, she was made to sit in a chair for 5 weeks, which left her with permanent nerve damage. While Margaret was eventually released from the asylum, she spent the rest of her life in a wheelchair. Many other patients suffered similar fates. So could the ghost of one of these patients have returned to haunt the asylum all those years later? Let's continue our investigation to find out. But first, let's take a quick look at the structure of this episode and the template used to make it. We've created a comprehensive guide that explains everything in detail, including a full example walkthrough. It's called Story Investigation Format Explained and Modeled. This video is the perfect way to understand how this series is made and how you can do it too. You'll learn how to write your own scripts and even get access to the same prompt that we use. Now, back to the video. I believe that the fire at the asylum was actually the work of a trespasser. Here's why. The sequence of events began on the evening of January 1994. Squatters reported seeing around 15 figures entering the building shortly before the fire started. The group had reportedly entered the building with cans of petrol and were seen running from the scene moments after starting the blaze. However, eyewitnesses struggled to identify the group as it was pitch black outside. Their descriptions of the men varied wildly, and nobody could agree on what they looked like. According to eyewitness Noel Matthews, one of the group ran towards the nearby railway bridge after starting the fire. But not everyone agreed that the fire was started on purpose. A spokesperson from the Northern Ireland Fire Brigade said that the cause of the fire was unknown, although they admitted that it was probably started deliberately. This seemed to suggest that there were multiple possible causes, leaving us with more questions than answers. Could it really have been started by a ghost? And if not, who was responsible? Let's continue our investigation. As the fire raged on, locals gathered near the scene hoping to get a better look at the fire. Among them was Mary, a local woman who claimed that the ghost of one patient was behind the blaze. According to Mary, the ghost was seeking revenge because he had died in the asylum. But is there any truth to her claims? Let's examine the evidence. As it turned out, there was very little information available regarding the fire itself. There were a few brief news articles covering the event, but nothing else was readily available. As I continued my investigation, I found that the asylum's records were sealed after 1994. This meant that information about those who died before this date was also off-limits. However, I did find the records of one man who died in the asylum, Francis Allen. He passed away on July 29, 1949, due to chronic bronchitis. But why was this important? Well, according to Mary, the man whose ghost started the fire died in 1949. But how could this be true when Francis's records showed that he passed away due to natural causes? The records don't mention anything about the death being suspicious, meaning that the fire may not have been started by a ghost after all. This evidence completely writes the timeline of events, meaning that the fire couldn't have been caused by a ghost. And if this document is authentic, the official timeline collapses. But just how much can we trust this document? It was taken from the British National Archives. I have no reason to doubt its authenticity, but it does beg the question, what else is hidden within the pages of this archive? Surely there must be more information out there about what happened at the asylum. After digging deeper, I found exactly what I was looking for. There was a second inmate who died in 1949, John Connors. His cause of death unknown. Could this John Connors be the ghost that started the fire? Perhaps, but there is still one problem. The records state that he died in 1949, which means he couldn't have started the fire 45 years later. Despite this, I am growing suspicious that the records are hiding something. Surely there must be more information out there. But before I continue my investigation, I think it's time to take a closer look at the timeline. We know that the fire occurred in 1994. We also know that there were no suspicious deaths in the asylum during the 1990s. This leaves us with one final possibility. What if the fire was started in 1994? This would explain why the records were sealed afterwards. But why would they try to cover up what happened? To find out, I visited the site of the former asylum myself and spoke to local residents. They told me that the building was notoriously dangerous and that fires were a regular occurrence. Apparently, people would visit the site specifically to start fires. This led to a lot of speculation that the ghost of John Connors was behind the fires, but it seems that there is a perfectly reasonable explanation for this. So, is this the end of the investigation? Has the mystery of the burning asylum finally been solved? Not quite. I still have one question that needs answering. Why were the records sealed in the first place? Surely there must be a good reason for this. Unfortunately, I've been unable to find out why the records were sealed. It's possible that there is more to the story than we're being told, but for now, this remains an unanswered question. This brings us back to the original question: who started the fire at the former Newcastle Lunatic Asylum? With all of the evidence examined, it is my belief that the fire was started deliberately by a trespasser. The eyewitness accounts seem to support this, as does the fact that the records were sealed after the incident. While some locals believe that the ghost of one former patient was behind the blaze, there is no evidence to support this. The most likely cause is that the fire was started by a group of teenagers looking to cause trouble. But what happens now? Now that the video is over, it's time to move on to the next investigation. And if you want to see where we go next, be sure to stay tuned. Thanks for watching.